The Detroit Pistons, the latest NBA team accused of sexual harassment. Good morning. Thanks for being with us on this Thursday. I'm Mimi Lang.
And I'm Dina Santafanti. We do begin with that breaking news involving the Detroit Pistons. In October, they suspended their assistant general manager for alleged misconduct with a female employee. Last night, we learned Rob Murphy has been fired.
And now, in a Fox 2 exclusive, we're hearing from that former employee who says it was far worse than misconduct. It was sexual harassment and assault.
Growing up in the city, really looking up to the Pistons, the bad boys, to have this opportunity with the Pistons was like a dream come true for me.
But that dream didn't last.
I feel like it was like a nightmare happened, and then being treated this way is heartbreaking. I can't even watch basketball.
Because for her, basketball is now synonymous with sexual harassment and assault. And now fired Detroit Pistons assistant general manager Rob Murphy.
Rob attempted to force me to have sex with him, and that's something hard to talk about.
Her name is DJ Raska. She's 32 years old, a mom, a former realtor with a big heart. In fact, we first met her back in 2019 when she was collecting prom dresses for girls who couldn't afford to buy their own.
We just want to help any girl in any neighborhood, any high school, who needs a prom dress.
She went on to become a project manager representing local rappers and actors and athletes.
I came across the Pistons when I wanted to have one of my players who I was managing try out for the G League team.
Through a mutual friend, she reached out to Rob Murphy with the Pistons via Instagram. He was the president and general manager of the Motor City Cruise, a former coach at EMU, a star athlete at Mumford High, an incredibly successful guy from humble beginnings in the D. They struck up an instant friendship.
He was just like, come in, come check it out. Once we did that, he said, hey, you seem pretty together. I'm looking, we have an executive assistant position here for the G League. Is that something that you may be interested in?
Not only was she interested, she was ecstatic. She still wanted to represent athletes, and now she would get to see the inner workings of a sport and team she loved. She started in September of 2021, and she says Murphy told her to quit her other jobs because this one required her to be all in.
I felt like this person believed in me.
But instead of booking flights or answering emails or setting up meetings, this executive assistant says she became Rob Murphy's personal assistant, assigned to pick up his teenage son every day from school.
To make it my full responsibility and my only responsibility, that's a 45-minute drive every day of, dropping someone else's child off, being responsible for a teenager that I wasn't ready to be responsible for.
Raska, a single mom with a child of her own, says she was put in charge of her boss's son. When Murphy was out of town on scouting trips, he asked her to stay at his house.
I actually cared about this kid. His dad wasn't around, his mom was out of state. And so to be there with him so he wouldn't be there alone was a huge deal.
You might be asking why she stayed. Well, because she had a family of her own to support.
Because I did give my other positions away, my other careers away. I have to support my daughter, and I have to keep this roof over our heads. So if what you want me to do is to pick up your son and take care of your son, and I'm going to do it.
But Raska says she felt humiliated.
It was just kind of like I was turned into a personal assistant nanny. And I was also called at one point, a couple times, the driver by his son and his son's friends.
But they weren't the only ones insulting Raska. She says Rob Murphy was likable and supportive, giving career advice one day and belittling her the next.
He made statements, not only to myself, but to another colleague about me, that HR didn't want me there. Nobody wanted me there. My job was going to be given to a person who had a higher education than I did. That HR thought I was ghetto, and that without him I wouldn't have the position.
Raska says she felt isolated. The one and only time Human Resources had ever approached her about anything was to admonish her for her outfit.
I was told, quote, "You look like you're going to a club," by HR. "You look like you're about to go clubbing."
Raska says she knew she couldn't go to Human Resources with her concerns about Murphy.
It was definitely the verbal first, and then it led to the physical.
Some of the physical happening right at the practice facility, sometimes at his house.
He grabbed right in front of my daughter, grabbed my breast area and grabbed my crotch area and said, "This is going to be mine one day."
Even then, she says she couldn't tell HR.
My main concern and fear that I would be fired, without a doubt, fired and silenced.
Because what was happening, Raska says, was way worse than she could have imagined. Remember, she was assigned to stay overnight while Murphy was out of town.
He had came home at a time where he said he was going to be out of town, and things had escalated into a space where I was extremely uncomfortable. We were standing there in the doorway of his office, and he grabbed me and he kissed me in the mouth, and he was like, "Hey, do you want to sneak downstairs?" And I'm just like, "No, I'm okay. I'm good. Like, Rob, definitely don't want to do that." And he was like, "I want to put a baby inside of you."
Raska says she locked herself in another bedroom and left early the next day and repeatedly told Murphy she wasn't interested. Still, she was assigned to stay with his son, and again, he showed up unexpected.
He tried to force me to engage in sex with him at his house, and it was forceful, and it was to the point where I had to gain my strength mentally, emotionally, and physically to get myself out of that situation.
Raska says she told him she was on her period, that she didn't want this.
He's just like, "You just think too much, you know, you just need to let stuff happen. This isn't a big deal. Sex is sex," you know, all these things. I'm just thinking in my head, like, what just happened to me? I remember getting in my car and pulling away and just tears coming down my eyes, like, again.
Raska says she confided in other co-workers because she didn't want it to happen to them. One in particular urged her to speak up.
We were both in tears talking about it. She was like, "DJ, you have to say something. He has to be stopped." And in that sit down, I realized that I was going to be the person to stop him.
Raska says she started working from home, stopped picking up Murphy's son from school. A young female equipment manager was assigned to do that instead. Raska and the Pistons parted ways, but Murphy continued to text her. And then he had big news. Pistons general manager Troy Weaver, a longtime friend of Rob Murphy, appointed Murphy assistant general manager of the Pistons.
He continued to call and text, and then in August, I guess when he got the promotion as a GM, he sent me a link to the website to show that he had been promoted.
Raska says she continued to ignore him, but could not ignore what he had done.
That's when I had to realize, like, this is not okay. This is not typical, a man hitting on you, a man being interested in you. This is a man using his power to abuse, harass, and assault you. This is not okay.
Raska eventually contacted attorney Megan Bonani, whose clients include survivors of former MSU doctor Larry Nassar.
We contacted the organization. We presented her concerns. We gave them a list of what happened, and we asked them to investigate and look into it.
In October of 2022, the Pistons suspended Rob Murphy, citing an investigation into misconduct involving a former female employee.
When I did hear that he was suspended, I felt liberated.
Raska even sat for an interview for 2 hours with the Pistons attorneys.
I was informed that the interview with DJ was helpful and that she appeared to be credible. But since that time in October, we have heard nothing.
Raska has since taken a lie detector test that she passed with flying colors.
We want transparency, we want accountability, and we want Mr. Murphy to be held accountable.
Accountability in a sport that's seen far too many allegations of sexual harassment. They are now filing a civil suit in Wayne County against Murphy and the Pistons organization, alleging sexual harassment and retaliation, as well as assault and battery. They've also filed another complaint with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, now under investigation that could lead to a case in federal court.
Silence is not an option. It's not for me. It shouldn't be for any other woman. Women before me, women that come after me, I have a daughter. Silence is not an option. I really want justice. This is my chance to voice the truth my way and to be heard and take my power back.
All right, now Raska's attorney says it is a shameful situation that it took the threat of a lawsuit for the Pistons to do what was appropriate. After all of these months, this is not the rogue employee. It is the organization that is corrupt. The organization condoned and approved, and we were complicit in what he did, and they were hoping that Miss Raska would go away. And in terms of the Pistons, they say this is a personnel matter. Rob Murphy did not respond to our request for comment. This is the lawsuit. It was just filed about an hour or so ago. Very, very serious allegations, and now she'll hopefully have her day in court.
So if we're looking at this timeline and understanding what happened here, does it seem like he lost his job knowing that the media now was going to expose this story?
Absolutely looks that way. Absolutely looks that way. We know that they suspended him back in October. Nothing had happened, despite the fact that DJ Reska sat down with their attorneys. And then suddenly, when we started asking questions, media, last night, we heard he's fired.
Another question is, how much did the Pistons know as this was going on? I know she says she was afraid to lose her job, which I think is a very common fear.
Absolutely.
When you're going through this. So who knew what and when did they know it?
Exactly. And as you heard, she didn't feel like she could confide in HR. She felt for sure she would lose her job. She confided in other people that she worked with. She didn't want this to happen to other people. But even once they were aware of the problems in October, the Pistons still did not take any action until we suddenly learned of this last night.
Wow. What a great job on that story, really laying out what happened. And brave of her to share the story.
Very brave of her. She did not want to have to do this.